Welcome to Vision India at 75, Vision India Forum Samrit Mahotsav series. The name coined after the great 75-year celebrations announced by the Honorable Prime Minister on 12th of March 2021. We started in December 2020, and the vision and mission of the Amrit Mahotsav series is completely aligned with the nation's prosperity, growth, and desire to be numero uno in the world by the 100th year of independence. General V.K. Singh, Brigadier Ajit Apte, Lieutenant General K. Rao, Lieutenant General Konsam Himalaya Singh, Admiral Robin Dhawan, I can name, go on, Admiral Sunil Lamba, go on, Air Marshal Bajpai, top services brass. Primarily, they helped in building this up in the initial stages of the series. We have Brigadier Umesh Singh Bawa, Veer Chakra, a leader, a man in the line of fire, a man who took bullets. I don't want to sensationalize this, as I do not do for any of the issues, because all of them are important issues, but a leader who commanded a battalion in the Kargil war. We are in the Kargil by month. May 3rd to 26th July 1999 is when that unfortunate episode of Pakistan's yet another circus betrayal took place, and they were slapped left, right, and center by Umesh Singh Bawa and his battalion. Veer Chakra Vijeta will take us through what it takes to be in a war, lead an army, lead a battalion in the line of fire. It means taking bullets on the chest. In the line of fire is a phrase which is used very lightly. None better than Mr. Brigadier Bawa, who would be able to explain to us what a leader has to go through, what a leader has to lead by, and what a leader has to weather during those days when he has to command a team of people to face bullets and sacrifice their lives for a nation, for their own nation. Over to you, Brigadier Umesh Singh Bawa.
Thank you, Amit, for giving this opportunity to speak on my, experiences of Kargil war and the challenges that I faced during that time. First and foremost thing I would, like to introduce to you is the terrain, which was very challenging during the Kargil war. It was a high altitude terrain with heights ranging from 16,000 feet to 17,000 feet. There was not enough oxygen to breathe. There was no cover, no tracks leading to the objective that we were supposed to tackle. Everything had to be carried man-pack because there were no mule tracks, or we could have used mules in any way. The physical fitness of the boys and the soldiers whom I commanded, in a high altitude, it becomes almost 50% less because of the lack of oxygen and the difficulty of terrain. A man who could carry 30 kgs on his back could merely carry 15 kgs. So this was the foremost challenge of ours, was the terrain that we were operating in. Second challenge that I faced was, during the initial stages, we had no clue where the enemy was and which heights was he holding and with what strength. We had to send patrols in different directions of the feature, and only when the enemy fired at us that we came to know that enemy's presence in that area is there. That means during the initial stages, I had to suffer physical casualties of my men just to gain information, because no information was available to us in the initial stages. During the last week of May, when I had my first attack, I remember that we were told by our superiors that 0.4875, where we were supposed to capture is held by just 8 to 10 infiltrators or terrorists at that time, what they called it. And then they said, go up, catch them by the neck and bring them down. I thought that it was just few terrorists who were there on top, and I ordered my Bawa company to lead the attack. Initially, they captured point 4540 without much resistance from the enemy. But then after that, next day or the night, I would say, when we were going ahead to look for the enemy, my company got surprised completely. They were fired upon by 7 to 8 MMGs, that is machine guns. And 7 to 8 machine guns means minimum 20 to 24 people up there, where we were told just 6 to 8 people. See, you can see the amount of fire that we suffered. My boys repelled the attack by the enemy with lot of courage, but they were outnumbered and surrounded by the enemy. I lost 1 JCO and 5 other ranks, and almost 10 with gunshot wounds. Rest of the men, they moved left and right and came back to the battalion headquarters. Some went to the regimental aid post to get the first aid, and my attack was shattered by the enemy before it could even begin. So that was the information part or the initial stages. After that, I decided that I will take time. I will send my patrols all over and go and select my own direction of attack after I have gained enough information about the enemy. Next 20 days, I did this. And when I had got enough information, I actually found out that that feature was held by 60 to 70 men. So you can imagine 6 to 8 people initially, and then finally it was 60 to 70 men who were there, up there. This was the biggest challenge.
So how do you in such a barren terrain, I mean, with no cover, with no life around, with snow, with altitude of 17,000, how do you gather such information in 20 days? And if you could gather, then why couldn't you gather it before launching the attack?
See, initially, when the enemy came, people were in a hurry because they never knew that he was holding those heights. We were the core reserves. We were deployed somewhere near Srinagar. We were inducted into the area for, actually attacking the features. Without giving enough information to us, we were pushed into action. But once I had suffered casualties, I know how it feels to lose my men. I am answerable to each and every family of those soldiers who I could not bring back. Therefore, I decided, I told my commander that I'll take my own time and send my patrols in different directions, and then only I will make my final plan of attack. So they understood my situation, and they agreed and gave me those 20 to 30 days which I asked for. I took so much time because the terrain was very difficult and they were all on the top, and you couldn't know about them until unless they fired at us. So I had to send patrols so close so that these people start firing at us. And once they fired, then I could make out by the type of guns which they fired at us that how many men are probably holding that feature.
Yes, we did not have drones that time. We did not have, but definitely we had the facility of satellite imaging and all that. Doesn't all those things help in those kind of situations?
No, actually, satellite imaging was there, but it was very difficult to pick up those small dots that were there because they were very well camouflaged and they were not in groups. They were in small groups, holding heights, different heights. It was only once we started going near those heights and they started firing at us that we came to know that these features are being held by this enemy. So second challenge was the lack of information, which I just mentioned, which we did not have about the enemy. Third, challenge was the morale and motivation of your men. How do you, first, initially you pepped up your men, to throw these soldiers out who have, Pakistani soldiers out who have come into our territory. But when I got my first attack and I suffered casualties and I failed in that attack, the morale of my troops, was going down. I could not let this happen. I had to go climb up that feature physically, speak to my men and tell them that this is just a starting. And, we had to take revenge of those people whom the enemy had killed, those 6 soldiers whose dead body was lying there. And I could not even pick up those dead bodies because next day morning when I sent my patrol to pick up those dead bodies, these Pakistanis started firing at us. We raised a white flag saying that we just want to come and retrieve our bodies, but they did not allow us. That was a turning point. And I told my men that until unless we capture this feature, we will not be able to retrieve our fallen soldiers' bodies. So this point I used as motivating point, to play with the emotions of my men. This is what is required during the war. You have to, actually play with the emotions of your men to do, something which is so difficult. And I was able to, motivate my men and, lead them by the front. Third, the next challenge that I faced was the artillery fire that was available during the initial stages were quite limited, though later on during the end of June or so, we had enough artillery fire with us. And also the support from Air Force during the initial stages was lacking. The Air Force support only came to us around 26th of May or so. And for the reason best known to the senior commanders, I won't like to comment on that, but it came quite late. And also, by that time, we were very close to the objectives. We had surrounded the objectives. My patrols were almost 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet away from the objective in all directions. And we couldn't have used Air Force to bomb those locations. So we had, because then those bombs could also, inflict casualties to my own troops. Therefore, we had to launch our attacks, with limited artillery and without the air support. This was again a challenge that it was, the attacks were mostly frontal because the limited approaches were there, and all those limited approaches were quite nicely held by the enemy. We had to launch multi-directional attacks to divert his attention, and wherever we found a weakness, we had to exploit that. That is how I planned my operations. Next challenge was, because of this high altitude terrain, generally the ratio of troops attacking troops is generally 3:1. That is, if the enemy strength is 1, that 3 times the troops are required. But in this type of terrain, the strength required was almost 1:10, or at times 1:12. That means almost 4 times that we require in a conventional operations. Next task and the challenge was the administrative task. That is, dumping of ammunition, carrying the water up, was a great task. Almost 50% of my strength was involved in this because I had no mules, to support me, because there were no mule tracks at all. So my 50% of the strength was used in administrative duties, in dumping the ammunition and water and your rations and other weapons that was required for the attack. So troops to task ratio was almost 1 to 10 and 1 to 12. Then lastly, the casualty evacuation was again a big, problem for us. We had only a couple of stretcher, from where we could carry the casualties to the regimental aid post for the first aid. But here the casualties were so much, the enemy fire, and I suffered, one officer, one JCO, and 34 other ranks I lost, and almost 125 with gunshot wounds. You can imagine a strength of 800 people, and you have almost 150 or 160 people almost injured badly. I'm not counting those small splintered injuries and other things. So evacuating these people, normally it takes about 4 men to evacuate a casualty. Here you require almost 8 to 10 people. So even after the attack, we had to use a lot of manpower, to get these people out, to the regimental aid post for the first aid. So these were the main challenges which I had there in the line of fire. And the foremost thing is, in the beginning of the war, one of my signal operators, who was my signal operator, he received a letter from his father with his photograph on that letter, his father's photograph on the letter, and he wished him well and asked him to go and fight with full gusto and take the bullet on the chest if need be, but not take the bullet on the back. He said, because if you take the bullet on the chest, everybody will know that you face the enemy like a tiger. But if you get a bullet in your back, everybody will say that you are running away from the enemy and you will be a disgrace to the village, to the regiment, and to the nation. In that same letter, he also wished me well as a commanding officer and took me and told me to take care of his son and bring him back safely. When I read this, the responsibility of mine as a commanding officer to bring back my troops safely after the operation, that sort of a responsibility, that awakening that I had was never before that. It was real responsibility of bringing these men back safely after the successful operations. Yeah, anything else?
Bawa sir, this is about the war thing that you fought with your men. So were you able to eliminate all the 60, 70 Pakistanis on the top?
Yeah, there 60, 70 Pakistanis were to be eliminated by not just my battalion. There were 2 more battalions which took part in this operation. That was, one was my unit, 17 Jat, and second unit was 13 Jackref, and the third unit was 2 Nagas. So we had the full brigade attack on these features, and each battalion was given about 30 people to tackle. So 30 people were tackled by me, 30 people were tackled by 13 Jackref, and about 20 people or the remainder people were tackled by 2 Nagas. And we were able to capture the whole objective. And it took us almost 6 days to clear the enemy from there.
How many final casualties does the Indian side have in this particular sub-operation?
In this particular operation in which I participated, my unit suffered 1 officer, 1 JCO, and 34 other ranks as fatal casualties. 2 Nagas had about 15 or 16 casualties, and 13 Jackraff had about 20 casualties. In fact, my unit objective was the toughest, and we suffered the maximum casualties during that operation.
To eliminate those 70 Pakistanis, we lost equal number of people on our side.
Yeah, correct.
Almost equal number of people on our side, and then there were 150 to 200, 250 injuries also.
Yeah, correct.
What do you learn from such kind of what is the crux of learning militarily and non-militarily?
Militarily, the crux of learning is that you should be well prepared, and for any eventuality. Like at those times, we did not have drones, we did not have gun locating radars, and we were short of some equipment which Pakistanis had and we did not have. Now, of course, we have all those things. Therefore, your intelligence, it was basically the lack of intelligence that we were not able to detect. If your intelligence is strong and you are able to detect any misadventure that is taking place opposite you, you'll be able to stall it much earlier and in a much better way, and we will not lose so many casualties. First is the preparation militarily, and non-militarily, I would like to say, after the war, although I was awarded, and my unit was awarded almost on the spot unit citation by the Chief of Army Staff, and we were awarded Battle Honor Moscow and Theatre Honor Kargil, 3 awards to the unit, and my other individual awards were almost 41, in which we had 1 Mahavir Chakra, 4 Veer Chakras, and other Sena medals and other awards. So I was very happy with the performance of my unit. But then lastly, I felt at what cost losing those 36 soldiers, my comrades, their families are without their breadwinners. It was a heavy cost to pay, for the nation. And what non-militarily I would expect is we should not have a war at all. We should avoid, and if we have any differences, we should try and resolve it, diplomatically, and war should be the last resort.
What was done to the Pakistani bodies?
Say again.
What was the treatment meted out to the Pakistani martyrs?
See, in our area, we could retrieve about 21 dead bodies in my area, battalion area. And rest, fell down, and some, ran away, and some fell down in the nalas. So about 21 dead bodies, but we gave them full military honors. We dug, graves for them. And we had a Maulvi, called from some other unit, who, did all the prayers and gave them a good burial, as a soldier. But at the same time, these Pakistanis, they treated our soldiers very badly.
What is essentially the difference between the Pakistani and the Indian army? Because they are also soldiers, they fight on the orders for their country. We fight, you fought for your own country. What is the kind of difference you find in the, because you've not only fought the war, you've been part of this, kind of environment for a long time. So you can understand the difference, probably comparison, because some people tell me that it's Pakistani army, is very unprofessional. The Indian army is very professional. The Pakistanis, they are, the political dispensation has no role. The army's chief plays a major role. The army, ISI, they control the political dispensation there, and their actions are accordingly, meted out to the enemies. Here in our side, the decisions are primarily political. So what are the differences you found, and what are the good things that probably, or what are the bad things we need to avoid,
See, the good thing about the Pakistanis was that these guys, achieved complete surprise. We did not know that they have come there. That I think that is something great they did. How they occupied. We were just completely unaware, and that was one of the strongest points of theirs. But then the bad thing about that was they thought that our reaction will be limited, and because attacking those mountains is not so easy, and we will not be able to do it. But our resolve was very strong. Militarily, we got all the soldiers concentrated there, and even at the cost of losing our men, we were determined to throw them out.
Were they the Pakistani soldiers, or were they all, were there genuine Pakistani soldiers who were, part of the Pakistani army, inducted into the army? Because a lot of times these stories also come out that these are people, boys from Kashmir, these are civilians, untrained, non-inducted Pakistani people also, they also come across the border over the LOC. So did you find that, what proofs did you have that they belonged to the inducted they were the inducted Pakistani soldiers, or were there some different breed?
You see, after the war ended and we had all these, dead bodies there, we searched all their pockets and all the things, we found documents which proved that they belonged to Northern Light Infantry. It was 8th Northern Light Infantry on which we did our attack. And all over, it was Northern Light Infantry, identity cards, their ration stores, their books that were there, some pay books they have. They all were identified as Northern Light Infantry guys. But some of them were wearing Pathani suit to give an impression that they are, terrorists, not the regular part of the regular army. And that's how they, try to camouflage the whole thing. And they always denied that they are not our men. They are the Hadis who are fighting for their freedom. They are not part of the regular army. But everybody knows that their, lies were all exposed. Musharraf's what he claimed that they were not their men, and that's why they never, picked up the dead bodies. They refused to even pick up the dead bodies. What a shame for an army to not even accept your own soldiers' dead bodies who have laid down their lives. And we as Indians were, taking care of their dead bodies, in the militarily way. We are professional soldiers.
What perplexes me, Bawaji, Brigadier Bawa, Veer Chakra Vijeta, Bawa Sahab, is that how in a world where in a country, in a world where people would not spare an inch when they have a meter on the side, how people get prepared to, reach that stage of facing bullets.
Yeah,
and it's almost like a suicide mission.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what, what is that I, initially mentioned, that morale and motivation of men. You have to, play with the emotions as a leader. I have to, play with the emotions. The izzat of the unit, the izzat of the regiment, the izzat of your clan as a Jat troops, which I was leading, the izzat of the village from where you come. These are the things. And then finally, the izzat of the nation and your national flag, which comes, much later. Initially, it is that small bonding within the unit, the regiment, and the village. What will they think? And this is what get them through. I gave you an example that you get the bullet on your chest, not on your back. That is what their parents also play an important role in motivating these guys.
Did you have Muslims in your battalion?
Say again?
Did you have Muslims?
No, we didn't have any Muslims in our battalion. We had only Jat troops.
Thank you, Brigadier Bawa. There's a lot to learn. Any final word for the youth of the country?
Yeah, final word of the youth for the country is, wherever you whatever position you are, if you find a Veer Nari is a lady who has lost her husband, in operations for the, by protecting the nation. If you hear about a Veer Nari or she comes to you for any problem, please go out of the way to help her, because she has sacrificed everything for the nation. Now it is our time and to pay back these people.
Are you in touch with those martyr families?
Yeah, we only meet them, sometimes, when unit raising day, we are also invited. If the unit is located in a station, we meet them during that time.
Are they all, at least the 34 men that you lost and the physical partial casualties, or the disabilities, disabled soldiers, are they all very well looked after now?
They are looked after. I won't say very well, but they are comfortable. They are looked after. I mean, whatever they got in return, they are okay.
Okay. Brigadier Bawa ji, thank you so much. Veer Chakra is something which definitely is what not only you, each of the martyrs, each of the soldier who faced those bullets deserves. Somebody has to be honored so that he becomes, an example, and examples cannot be the generic. So here is an example for the nation, Brigadier Umesh Singh Bawa. The world, the country, the world, the youngsters, the future of India depends on people like you, sir. Jai Hind and salutes you, sir.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you very much.